Hey everyone, it's Adam here from Ads Productions, and this is the review of the SteelSeries Aerox 3 wired lightweight gaming mouse. So as usual with these reviews, let's go over exactly what you get in the box. With this, it's kept short and sweet. You've got a manual, just covers all the basics of the mouse, the spec, what to expect and things like that. You have a USB-C cable, that's USB-C on the mouse end and USB-A on the PC end. The overall specs of this mouse include a sensor that's the SteelSeries TrueMove core. It's an optical sensor type. The CPI is 200 to 8500 in 100 CPI increments. The IPS is 300 on SteelSeries QCK surfaces. The acceleration rating is 35G. The polling rate is 1000 Hz, 1 millisecond. There is zero hardware acceleration. The material that covers the back of this mouse is a black matte finish that's built up consistently from ABS plastic. The shape of this mouse is designed for ergonomic and right-handed use, and the grip style is claw or fingertip. Obviously there will be a limitation here for those of you with bigger hands that want that palm grip, but just know it's claw or fingertip. There are 6 total buttons on this mouse, so you've got 2 on the left hand side. You've got the DPI button in the center, you've got the scroll wheel button, and then obviously you have the left and right click. Inside this mouse we have the SteelSeries mechanical switches, which are in fact rated for 80 million clicks. There are 3 RGB zones for the illumination, and these can be independently controlled via the SteelSeries Engine desktop app. The weight of this mouse without the cable is 57 grams. And the length is 120.55 millimeters or 4.75 inches. The width is 57.91 millimeters or 2.28 inches on the front, and the width at the back is 67.03 millimeters or 2.64 inches. The overall height of it is 21.53 millimeters or 0.85 inches at the front, and at 3.798 millimeters is the back, or 1.50 inches. With this mouse you're going to be clicking lots of times in different applications, so I thought I would show you, or at least demonstrate to you, how loud the clicking is. The mouse is about, let's say, half a meter away from the microphone at the moment. I'm just going to give it a bunch of clicks. That was my very technical, in-depth analysis of the click sound effect. Obviously, sarcasm intended. You've also got the scroll wheel as well. When you scroll up and down, it will give you a little bit of feedback. It will like bump to each different level. It's hard to explain. So you scroll and you have this sort of noise. So every time you scroll in a micro movement, you are essentially going to a different notch on the scroll wheel. And that's basically it for the scroll wheel and the left and right mouse click. The cable is apparently a super mesh type cable, however, it's just your average USB-C to USB-A cable, which is really good because you can actually replace this with whatever one you want, and I would strongly recommend doing this so you can change up the colour, the quality and the functionality. It doesn't get in the way, but it definitely feels like it's just your default cable, no frills, basic, gets the job done. Sometimes you want to add a bit of colour, add a different design, spice it up a little bit, that's up to you. I did find it a little bit weird how you can actually take the cable out of this mouse because it's a wired mouse, and the only real reason I can see for that is for travelling and moving it around. It's just a little bit odd because I would have thought surely that adds a level of weakness because it's just another component that can be removed and reconnected, so there's obviously going to be a weak point there. And it seems a little bit strange how they wouldn't have just had a direct cable plugged in and built into the device instead of a removable one, but anyway, I don't really have any complaints. It just seems a bit of a strange design choice. Functionality wise, when I was playing games, fast movement, moving it around, I didn't notice any sign of weakness, and it never disconnected from me when I moved it left to right in quick succession. Speaking of the mouse cable, it is 1.8 meters long or 6 foot, plenty of room for even the biggest desk. It goes down the back of my desk all the way down to the PC. There is plenty of slack to use here. Perfect. The material is a nice matte finish. There is a texture to it, although it's not so textured that it's uncomfortable. This is an extremely lightweight mouse. You can almost tell that immediately when you take it out of the box and you see the mesh design and you can actually see the internal components. You start to think, hey, maybe there's something missing from this mouse. But no, it really does perform very well. Design-wise, it's just a really cool looking mouse. I mean, you can have it on your desk and someone will walk past and go, what the heck is that? You'll have your internal components of the mouse lighting up from the RGBs. You'll see the little electric board inside it. I suppose the detachable cable is good for travelling and use with a laptop, etc. But normally with a wired mouse, you kind of just use it on a PC and then throw it in your bag. As long as you look after it, there's not normally any issue with things becoming loose or broken. The eye-catching design that this is truly based around, i.e. the RGB and the mesh at the top and bottom so you can see the insides of this mouse, isn't going to be for everyone. For most people it's going to be great, it's going to be such a unique looking mouse, but there are other people that don't care about all the flashy RGBs and extras of a mouse. They just want the performance and just to get on with it. They don't care what it looks like, they just care how it performs. And that's fine, you just have to understand and know where you stand when looking for a mouse. If RGBs and a cool looking mouse is what you're after, come on, just look at the mouse. You can't really go much further than this one. That being said, mentioning again the mesh design, if you take the mouse and you look underneath it, you've also got that mesh design there as well. Now, personally, I think they went a little bit overboard when designing this mouse and trying to make it as lightweight as possible. Don't get me wrong, a light mouse is great for obvious reasons. But when you start to add more holes into this mouse, or the mesh design, because essentially it's just patterns of holes, you then start to affect the structural integrity of the mouse. And what I mean by that is it just becomes weaker, the build becomes weaker, and if you squeeze the underside of the mouse or the sides, you do start to sometimes hear a bit of a creak, a bit of a bend in the body of the mouse, and it just feels like maybe they should have just left the underside of the mouse sat on your desk and not with the mesh pattern. Yes, it may have added a little bit more weight, but I think in terms of build quality and overall resistance and design, it would have been a better choice to have most of it be that mesh design, not top and bottom, because when you do that, you add vulnerability and or weakness to the mouse. And let's be honest, if you turn the mouse over, you're not really getting any bang for your buck because you're not going to be looking at the underside of your mouse a whole lot, whereas the top side of it, you certainly will. So we've established that the mouse design is fantastic, although maybe a little bit overboard in some aspects. The cable that comes with it, you can take it out of the main body, which is obviously great for putting in a backpack or portability. Although the cable isn't the greatest quality, it seems to work fine, no major issues there. The build quality, as in the feeling of the material, is just, that's what the standard should be. Yes, there's a little bit of a concern when it comes to the actual structure of the mouse as it gets weaker with more holes in it. However, with all its bends and flexes and slightly creaking here and there, I have been using this mouse for a little bit of time now. It is really good. You know, the lightness of the mouse at the beginning does seem a bit like, maybe the lighter mouse won't have the better build quality, but over time you do start to appreciate, especially when gaming, having a light mouse that you can have very quick reactions with. It's definitely the case with this one. The crown jewel of most of the SteelSeries devices is the application called the SteelSeries engine. That allows you to adjust the RGB settings of the mouse, so you can have the underside be a one colour, the top be another, etc, etc. Download that, have a play, go on other YouTube videos and have a look how they use it and what it is. You can change the DPI, the macros, the whole customization suite for SteelSeries is handled by the SteelSeries engine, which is by far their most polished and their best piece of software that I've used. And how does it actually perform in games? Yes, it might look nice, you can take the cable out and all that jazz, but if it doesn't perform very well in games, then what's really the point of having it? Well, personally I think it's not going to be the highest rated mouse of all time in terms of gaming performance. I have used other mice in the past, and it does come relatively close to the more premium models. With this mouse, the most emphasis you ever see on performance is when you use those quick movements in first-person shooter games, where you're basically just gliding the mouse over the mouse mat to make those quick, rapid movements. This mouse has performed as good as any other mouse that I've used. Again, I'm not going to go into the technical details of down to the millisecond. I'm kind of speaking as a consumer rather than a pro gamer. It holds its own in that division. And rest assured, there's not going to be an issue with performance when gaming with this mouse. It seems to work just fine. On the underside, the sensor does tend to be a little bit towards the back of the mouse, not towards the center, and some people have a little bit of an issue with this just because of tracking. And for example, if you lift the mouse as you're moving, it could have an issue tracking. But I didn't find that. But depending on your playstyle and your hand movements, this could become an issue. Not for me though. When you look on the underside of the mouse again, you'll see those little circles. These basically connect to your surface and make the mouse glide across the surface with no issue. I think if a mouse were to have issues with the smoothness on the surface, then that's a pretty major issue and would have been picked up in testing, and as a result, I don't have a single issue with the way this mouse tracks on a surface. Works perfectly well. I did find though, however, one of the downsides when it came to this was the two little buttons on the left hand side did get in the way slightly. And what I mean by that is when you're trying to play games and you're using quick movements and you're just gaming, so you're focused and you don't really care about what the keyboard and mouse are doing, you just want them to work. I did actually misclick a few times the left and the right button. That being said, they are of the smaller variety. They don't tend to be these big thick buttons on this one, like we've seen in other mice. These are long and thin, so the chance to press them are greatly reduced. So it could just be me being a bit silly and not really having good hand-eye coordination, but that's a story for another day. I used it for a few hours, and comfort-wise, it was great. It didn't have any fingerprints on it because the design is a matte design, not one of these shiny ones that are fingerprint prone. I didn't get any RSI or whatever you call it, where you have repetitive strain on your hand and it becomes achy. It was very comfortable to use the mouse in a series of different environments, applications and games. I don't really have anything else to say about this except it's a solid mouse that just looks incredible. The RGBs and the design of this I'm a really big fan of, and it just stands it out from a long list of mice. Because if you think about it, if you have all these different mice lined up, plugged in on a desk, most of them do look very similar nowadays. Standard colour, standard type of texture, but not all of them have this mesh design, and it really does stand it out from the crowd. So if you're looking for a mouse that's going to stand out and attract attention, it might not be the ultimate high-end in gaming performance, but it absolutely most certainly holds its own and doesn't have any issues keeping up with the modern day standards of competitive games, such as, just throwing names out there, you've got your Fortnites, your Call of Duties, your Apex Legends, your Grand Theft Autos, your RTS games, all of them in a variety of different types of games. This isn't going to restrict the way you play, and if anything, it will improve it. Even if the RGBs give you that kind of, hey, look at my shiny mouse, so I'm going to play better subconsciously. You understand what I'm saying. It's not going to hinder your performance, this mouse, but it's not going to set you levels apart. It's just a very, very well built mouse. Looks fantastic. Could be a little bit stronger. Take off the mesh from the bottom would be my suggestion. But besides that, seriously consider this mouse. Thank you very much. This has been Adam from Ads Productions with the review of the SteelSeries Aerox 3 wired, lightweight gaming mouse.